Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Apparently, it's got my laptop camera showing instead of my other camera. So give me just a moment. I also need to check my settings, but I can't see the whole screen here. Let's see if I can change. Let me move this out of the way for a second. And I need to. Mm, uh, I didn't mean to have my laptop. I didn't actually mean to have my laptop the camera as my main camera. It's the quality is obviously not as good. I mean, you might not know that, but right now I need to check and make sure that my microphone is picking up fine. It should be, but let me double check. Just want to double check. Bear with me for just a moment. I don't normally live stream directly through YouTube. Yes, it is working. Okay. I just double checked it. It is working. I decided to use this channel. Let me move my microphone down there. Maybe extend it out. This might be a little loud, but we're gonna turn this a little bit. How about right there? Yes, right there is good. Now I can be free with my hands, and I don't have to touch the microphone or anything like that. Once again, I do apologize for using the camera here. I looked for the options to try to change the camera. I don't see where I can do that. But today, I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, for watching this video. I haven't done much on this channel in a very long time. You might see recently that I did some live streams for some sports channels, but the reason I did that is because I have another channel where I do play by play sports. And the NBA is very, very heavy handed when it comes to giving copyright strikes on YouTube, and YouTube supports them 100%. So even if your content is 3 hours long and you put just a little tiny clip of about 5 to 10 seconds of an NBA game in there, they will claim the whole video and give you a strike. And that's what happened to my other channel. And I was down for a week, about a week. And I don't know what to expect from this live stream. I don't know if I'm actually going to be getting a any live viewers, but we'll see. One moment, I'm going to close this. I've got my clothes hanging up back here. Those are just my jackets, but it doesn't look very nice. So let's just close the door there. Here we go. Okay. So today's topic, let's try to jump right into it. It's hard to know exactly where to begin. I just wanted to start off by saying this very clearly. About 3.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, and it's renal cancer. Cancer. For those of you who don't know what that is, basically it's cancer that starts in a kidney. And so you could say kidney cancer or renal cancer, but it's basically kind of in the same area. They found a large tumor. The reason that they found it, and this is the bad thing about kidney cancer, and I'm just going to say, just briefly go over this for those of you who don't know. Um, some cancers, they're very, very uh, covert, I guess you could say. They don't really find them until it has become um, almost too late to do anything with it. So essentially, what happened was, um, you know how whenever you're running and exercising and your side kind of starts to hurt, um, uh, and you've just been running too much and whatever, and it's putting too much strain, you get that like that pain in your side. All of us are familiar with that. All of us all of us who, if I can speak right, all of us who have actually done some serious running, even as a kid, you run too much and you get what they call the stitch in the side, right? I used to be a really big athlete. For those of you who knew me in high school, you probably remember that I was active in every sport. My family members know that I was active in every sport. Even outside of school, I did things like taekwondo. I loved being active. When I came to Asia, I tried to get active again and do more things because in the U.S. I just gained too much weight, and I would try to play basketball, badminton, and things like that, and they're fun. But it took me a while. I had to lose a lot of weight, and after I got down to a decent size, I guess you could say, I lost a lot of weight. I mean, a lot of weight. It was about 70 total pounds, I think. And but even after all of that, I always felt fatigued and tired. I didn't really rest well, and I would wake up still feeling unrested and sleepy and tired and things like that. And basically, when I left China, I was in China for almost 7 years. At that time in Beijing, a doctor examined me, and she couldn't really speak English, and she was trying to explain to me about my scan, and her inability to I'm still not sure exactly whether she just misdiagnosed or just mistranslated, but I think that she misdiagnosed, and here's the reason why. She said that my liver was too large, and, I think it was a combination of misdiagnose and mistranslation, actually, because your liver is on one side and the my tumor is on the other side. It's a kidney tumor. And she said that my liver was too large, and I think what she was trying to say was that my right kidney appeared to be too large. But I just thought, maybe I need to improve my diet, do some fasting, and take care of myself or whatever. And when I not long after that, I moved to Japan. So, um, from there, I tried to do more exercise and stuff. I played baseball in Tokyo, but whenever I would exercise, I realized that it was not helping me. I was not getting better. And one day I was walking and I was just having more and more pain in my right side. And I was having trouble catching my breath and getting oxygen. And I thought, man, I'm really out of shape. That's what I thought. But the pain in my side got really bad. And while I was walking just up a small hill going out to my old house here in Japan, what happened was I had to stop and take a breather. I literally had to stop and lean on the guardrail and catch my breath. And I thought, man, this is a little worse than just being out of shape. I actually canceled my membership at the gym because I realized it's not a matter of being out of shape. There's something going on. Well, just a few days later, I was at the school. I was working as an English teacher, as an ALT. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's an assistant language teacher. Essentially, you work in the school system, the public school system in Japan. Usually you work for a dispatch company. If you're lucky, you can work directly for the school, but usually, essentially, what I was doing was working between a middle school and a few elementary schools. And most of the time, I would spend my time at the middle school. And one day I was there at work. It was very close to 5 o'clock, actually, getting close to the end of the day. I had just gone to the toilet a few minutes earlier, and then I was sitting at my desk maybe 15 minutes before 5 o'clock, and I just felt another strong urge to go to the bathroom, but it felt different. And when I went to the bathroom, I went to the men's urinal, and all I can say is what came out was a bloody mess. It wasn't just, bloody urine. It was pure blood and big clots. And I don't know how those clots came out of me. It was a big mess. Luckily, nobody was in the bathroom. I had to try to clean it up. It wasn't one of those things where you could just flush the toilet or flush the urinal and it washed everything away. No, no, no. There were lots of things in there that could not flush away. plus it had splattered all over. It was, I don't mean to be graphic, I'm just saying it was a big mess and it shocked the crap out of me. Nothing like that has ever happened to me in my life. So, what I did was, of course, I talked to the supervisor and I let them know I have a little bit of a problem. I need to go to the clinic. And if you're wondering why not go to the hospital, well, here's the thing: in Japan, you go to the clinic first, unless it's like unless you're dying. You know, if you're you're really sick, it's truly an emergency. Then you go to the emergency room at the hospital. But considering how I wasn't having a tremendous amount of pain, and I wasn't fainting or anything like that, the first step was to go to the clinic. They would examine me, and if needed, they would refer me to the hospital. If you go straight to the hospital without any kind of referral, then you're going to pay extra money for that. That's the way it works in Japan. So it's like a two-step process they've set up. I'm still not sure exactly why they do that, but I can't just contact the hospital and make an appointment with the doctor. It's not the way it works. You make an appointment with a doctor at a clinic and they examine you, and that's what they did. They gave me a test, and then a few tests. The doctor said that essentially my situation is very serious, and I need to go and get examined at the hospital by a a doctor there immediately. So a urologist, I guess you could say. And so that's what I did, and that's where I found out after the scans and the blood tests and everything that I had this large tumor on my kidney, and it was already too large to have surgery to take it out. And so they recommended a variety of, chemotherapy type cocktails, and I refused those things. But there are a couple of different sides to this that I'd like to discuss. And your situation, if you are in Japan or if you're going to come to Japan, I think that there are a few different important aspects of a situation like this. Of course, there are other situations that are maybe less serious because it's possible for you to get injured or to get an illness or something that incapacitates you for a significant amount of time. And so you can't really work. And I don't mean for about a week or a few weeks. I mean something that is going to take a while for you to recover from. Maybe you were in an accident and you were injured physically, or maybe it's an illness, or maybe it's like my situation, it's cancer. It doesn't matter. What matters is if something happens to you in Japan and it's going to require you taking off of work, but your visa is dependent upon work, then it's going to put you in a bit of a pickle depending on your situation. And that's why I wanted to look at it from a couple of different angles, because one angle is my situation. Okay. I came here alone. I'm not married. I have one daughter. I guess if you want to call her that. She and I don't speak. I wish she would call me. I wish she would contact me. She's now 25 years old. She lives in the US. I'm American, by the way, in case you couldn't tell. I'm sure that all of you could tell that by my way of speaking, and that I'm wearing a baseball cap. Actually, it's a ball cap, but this is an American football team, the Houston Texans. Just my way of being. You could probably guess that. But the thing is, I I always wanted a close family. It's if you want to say it this way, you could say that it's sad because I actually grew up with a dream of having a close, loving family. Okay. And you might wonder, well, you were in a family. Why didn't you just take part in that family? I tried. I had an older brother, a younger sister, my mom and my dad. And there are five of us. There were five of us in the house when I was growing up. Most of the time, not always, but just to put it very simply without going into a lot of detail, it was a very unhealthy environment, and especially for me. I'm not trying to say that Nobody else in my family went through any problems, and I'm not trying to say that my brother or my sister didn't have their own share of troubles, but they enjoyed some favoritism and I guess you could say um, favorite child effects from our parents that I did not. My older brother was kind of the golden child. He was basically liked by everybody, and I mean, my dad gave him some grief sometimes, but overall, they would kind of let him do whatever he wanted to do, especially when he got older. But my sister, she was the baby. She was the only girl. She was heavily spoiled. Her and my mom used to argue like cats fighting, but my dad spoiled the mess out of her, and I always got in a lot of trouble if I just didn't give her what she wanted. You know, she was so heavily spoiled, she just felt entitled to everything. And anyway, like I said, I don't want to get into a lot of detail. I just want to let you know that the environment was such that my dad was disappointed in me. He didn't like any of the things I wanted to do. He was always trying to control me. My mom, she lived in a world of her own. She was the storm. If if she was calm, then it was not really a bad day, you know. But she was if she was out of control, then everybody felt it. I really could have used some high quality earplugs when I was going to sleep when I was a kid, and basically everybody used me as kind of a garbage can. I'm a sensitive guy. I've always been a very sensitive guy, but the only difference is that when I was a kid, for various reasons, I felt a lot of shame. I felt um, unloved, unappreciated. I was always trying to do things to prove and to prove myself and get love and things like that. And but the reason I'm telling you this, you might wonder, what does this have to do with the health system and things in Japan? It has a lot to do with it because what I'm getting at here is that I just want it to be very clear that when I left America, okay, because most of my family is in Louisiana, and when I left there, and my determination was to never go back. I never had any interest in going back to Louisiana, especially, but to America in general. My plan was to move abroad, and I've been living abroad now for almost 13 years. I lived in China almost 7 years, and in Japan now almost six. So getting close to 13 years abroad. And the thing is, when you move abroad and you don't really have anything or anyone else to go back to, this is something very important for you to think about. If you move to Japan or China or wherever you move abroad and your intention is to stay there either for a really long time or maybe you're thinking about retiring there or living there or things like that, then that's a little different than just, I want to go have an experience and then I'll go back. I'll go back to America at some point. Don't know when. Or maybe you change your mind. After you move abroad, you find out you really, really like it. You want to stay there and build a life. You meet somebody, etc. Fine. But if you don't have anybody to go back to, you don't have any support system back home, so to speak, and then you get sick. Okay, that's one scenario, and that's like my situation. Um, And then there are the people that do have family and friends and things like that. I'm going to give you my thoughts about what I think you should do in these situations. And like I said, medical reasons for missing work and taking off, they vary. And if it's something like you're on a bicycle and you get into an accident and you get messed up pretty bad and you're going to be out of work for quite a while, months. And you got to think about when your visa expires, applying for a new visa. And the reality is, now you might wonder, what will your company do? Would they wait on you? No, they're not going to. Not in the way you're thinking. So, for example, let's say that your visa is going to expire in 6 months, and you're working as an ALT. Yeah, and they need you to work. They need you to teach. They need you to be there. That's the most important thing. I know it sounds ridiculous, but the ALT dispatch companies, at least the one that I worked for, and I don't think it's any better with the other companies really, is that the most important thing to them is that you're actually there. And let's say that a guy goes out, or a girl goes out and does a lot of drinking and partying on Sunday night, and they're totally wasted and hungover and just sloppy on early Monday morning. This was never me. I've never been that guy, but there are a significant amount of people like this, or there have been in the teaching positions in Japan. But the company would rather you show up at the school, looking frazzled, and actually be there and be there on time rather than you miss, or them not to have, if they don't have anybody to replace you, they don't have a backup person. They just want you to be there. That's the only thing they really care about. So I've had this conversation before where I actually contacted my company. I said, I'm losing blood. I went to the doctor. He said that I have a tumor. It's very hard for me to walk up the hill to go to the school. I'm barely catching my breath. I feel like I'm about to pass out. And this was their response. Okay, this is not a joke. Okay, this is not a joke. Oh, I'm so sorry. That sounds terrible. So are you going to be at work tomorrow? It's not a joke. And I've been asked that many times. I've been asked that many times. And not just by one manager, it's been a couple of different guys. I contact them to let them know. I contacted them to let them know several times about what was going on and how I really needed to take time off. It was getting more and more difficult for me to get to the school because there's no bus to the school. And if you like anime, if you like Japanese anime, you'll notice that in a lot of these, or even Japanese TV shows, you see the picturesque town with the school up on the hill, or the houses up on the hill, right? And the kids ride the bike down to the school, or they'll ride the bike to the base of the little mountain, and then they walk up to school. Or the younger kids, middle school and down, they don't ride bikes to school; they walk to school. And so early in the morning when you're in the town, it's very cute because you'll see all the little kids walking to school with their backpacks and uniforms. And then you see all of the middle school kids walking to school, and you'll see the high school students mostly riding bikes to school. But some of these schools are way up on a huge hill or a small mountain, and there's no bus that goes up there. It's different for the primary schools. You won't see that for the primary schools. No, they're not gonna make the little kids walk all the way up such a hill to get to an elementary school. Those tend to be like kind of right in the community. But a lot of the junior high schools and high schools are in these difficult to reach places, and you're not allowed to drive there unless it's a countryside assignment as an ALT, as a teacher. So I would basically tell them, I'm having a really hard time walking up to the school. And they'd say, "Oh, that's tough. So are you going to be at school tomorrow?" And here's the problem. If you have to take off because of health reasons, you're only going to have like maybe 3 sick days for the whole year, okay? That's paid. But my illness was so bad that I had to go back to the hospital at least once a month, at least once a month, every month, to check with the doctor, get my blood tested, et cetera, et cetera. And that meant that I had to go on a weekday because guess what? You can't make an appointment and go see the doctor on the weekends. And here's another thing. If there's a holiday and the holiday happens to be on a Monday or Friday or Wednesday or whatever, and you're like, "Oh, great, the school is closed. I can make my appointment for that day." No, because the hospital will also not be seeing patients that day. Of course, if there's an emergency, that's different, but you're not allowed to just make an appointment and go to the doctor on those holidays. So Japan makes it very inconvenient when it comes to things like that because if you want to get things done at the government office, or if you want to get things done by like going to the hospital, you have to take off of work to go. It's highly inconvenient. And in some places, the the working hours are very limited. So a lot of these shops or stores that you might need to go to are closing early, or they're closed on the weekends or something like that. So you have to find time to get over there, and it becomes like a juggling act. You don't want to miss work. But that's the first thing I noticed, is that when you start leaving work after missing just a few days, then you start getting docked. And being a teacher is not a way to make money. It's barely a way to exist. That's how much money you make as a teacher. Don't let anybody fool you. I've even seen a guy recently who talked about how, the wages in Japan, despite being stagnant, are livable wage. Um, and he even mentioned that it's enough to pay all of your bills and maybe save a little bit on the side. No, no, it's existing is what it is. It's existing pay. And he also mentioned, I think in the video, you can have a nice apartment, plus pay your bills, have a little money to save, or a little money to travel when you have time off or go do something. No, no, it's not enough money to do those things. You'll have to get an efficiency apartment, which you won't like. It might seem cute at first, but you'll get tired of it really fast. Um, your transportation will be expensive, and it is true that if you're required to commute to the school for a teaching job or another job, Japan is very good about the companies paying for your transportation. They'll pay for that. They'll cover those things. But in your time off, you'll have to pay for transportation. So getting a nice apartment, and I don't mean like super nice, I just mean something that's not an efficiency apartment, something that's more than just one big room with the kitchen, the bathroom, and the living room and dining room all built into kind of one big long shotgun room. That's basically the standard. And if you can find one of those in a city, a substantial city, for less than 50,000 yen, you're lucky. But the problem is that your pay is more than likely less than 250,000 yen a month. And after they take out insurance, you've got yearly resident tax. You've got you got to pay into the pension system. You've got other things to pay for, other little fees here and there. They chip away at your money, and of course your there. Let's just say that there are several things. Okay, if you don't have a car and you don't have a property, then you don't pay any taxes on those. But if you decide to get those, you'll also have those to pay for. You'll have a yearly property tax. You'll have a yearly automobile tax, uh, and things like that. Those will add up. But after you pay for your apartment, your electricity, your internet, your phone, water, gas, all of those things, and then your personal transportation for the weekend, your groceries, all of those things, you're essentially going to have nothing left. So coming to Japan as a teacher, it's it's really just it's not it doesn't really do anything for you, except it gets you into Japan. It gives you an experience in Japan, and it allows you a doorway to try to look for something else. Um, but if you're in that situation and then you get sick, all right? I'm not talking about, like I said before, not just 1 or 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. I'm talking about something very substantial. Then it's a real threat to you for a couple of reasons. One is you're gonna lose money. You're not gonna get paid from your company beyond about 3 days. They're gonna give you a few days of sick leave, and then after that, nothing. And if you're not gonna be able to come to work, let's say, like I said before, let's say your visa expires in 6 months, and your illness or situation is such that you might not be able to return to work after 6 months, then they will not renew your work visa. They won't do it. They need to make sure that you're going to come to work. So what happened to me was I really needed to take off, and I was hoping that I would be able to find a way to recover my health enough to come back to work the next year and teach again, but it just it just didn't happen. And you might be asking, "Well, what is my alternative if I want to stay in Japan, but I'm not able to return to work in time?" Well, you can apply for a a, a insurance support system. It's kind of like unemployment, okay? But it's more like medical unemployment in a way. So medical insurance. So here's the way it works. Let's say that you're working and a company lets you go. All right. If a company lets you go and you're looking for another job and you're having a hard time finding a job, you can actually apply for unemployment. And if you get that, you'll get a percentage of your salary every month until you get another job. However, there are a couple of caveats to that. One is it takes a while to get approved and start getting those benefits. It can take many months. And it's the same. It's actually worse, I think, for the medical insurance reimbursement. That's what I applied for. From the time I applied to the time I actually started getting a benefit was several months. It was more than 4 months, I think, until I finally started to get some reimbursement. And it wasn't even all of my salary. It was just a percentage of my salary. So it was much less. And the other thing is, on top of that, you still have to continue paying for your pension and your health insurance and things like that. Now, once you're in a bad situation like that, you can go to the government office and apply for a pension exemption. You show them your situation, and you give them the information from your hospital, from your doctor, and then they will give you an exemption. So that's good. But the problem is your health insurance premiums that you're paying every month are based on your previous year's income. For those of you who don't know that, in Japan, you don't just have a flat fee to pay all the time for health insurance. Your health insurance payment every month is figured once a year, and the amount you pay is based on your income from the year before. So when you first come to Japan, they have no record of what you paid. So essentially, you were they have no record of what you were paid. So essentially, your pay is like zero. So your insurance will be pretty low the first year. But after that, the year after that, it will go up a lot. And the reason is because if you work that whole year, then the next year it will go up. If you make even more money the next year, then the year after that, your insurance will go up even more because they're assuming that what you're making right now is at least as much as it was last year. And that's how they decide to tax you. If you suddenly get sick, okay, think about how this works. It cuts both ways. If you suddenly get sick, like I did, and essentially you're forced to work because if you're like, well, I really need to take off, the doctor says I need to take off. Actually, my doctor recommended that I go back to America, but we'll get to that because that's connected to another topic. But I really needed to take off work, but I was not in a position to be able to do that because there was nobody to support me and there was no immediate support available. But if I were to take off and wait for this medical insurance, then what would happen is I'm still paying for my health insurance every month. And that was very, very difficult for me. So I continued to work. I was diagnosed in May, all right, May of 2022. And I continued to work to the end of the year, to the end of December, despite needing to take off in May. That's that's how. I don't know how I got through that, to be honest, but every day I felt miserable. I could barely get up the stairs. When I was in the class with the kids, they they gave me a chair to sit in. My coworkers were like gold to me. They treated me so well, but I felt bad because there was a lot of stuff that I couldn't do anymore. I couldn't play sports with the kids because I brought my own glove, my cleats, so I could throw the baseball with them. I went to the tea ceremony club. You know, they have a club for tea. Um, I would play all the sports with all the kids. Volleyball, soccer, basketball. I would play with all of them. Soft tennis. We played everything together. And then they also had music club. I would go listen to them play music, and it was so beautiful. And I would just visit all the clubs and do everything with the kids. If I didn't have class, I would just go find out what the kids were doing, and I would try to play with them. My colleagues told me that they'd never seen an ALT like me that was so engaged with being with the kids and playing with the kids and really just giving them a real experience with a foreigner, not just me being in class helping them with English, but really developing a cross-cultural relationship with them. And they did everything they could to help me to get along during those 6 months. But my company just kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. I kept telling them I really need to take off. I really need to take off, and they kept pushing me to go to work. So um, I kept working, and I tried my best to save money to prepare so that I wouldn't crash after I took off of work and applied for medical assistance. Now, when I later on I wound up going into the hospital with a blood clot in my leg, and that happened, let's see, just a little over 2 years ago. So 3.5 years ago, I was diagnosed. A little over 2 years ago, I went into the hospital with a blood clot in my leg. I won't get into that because that was a whole ordeal. But I was in the hospital almost 2 months, and the doctor really, really, really pushed hard again. "You should go back to America. You should go get support from your family. You should ask them to take care of you. You should go and be with them. Your situation is not good." And he maintained that I was most likely going to pass away in a couple of years. And the best thing for me was to go to America, get treated in America. The language barrier was zero, right? And I could have support from my family. But the problem with that was there were a couple of problems. The first big problem was getting support with my family was not going to help. Who was I going to stay with? You know, I had nobody to stay with. My daughter wasn't talking to me. She still isn't talking to me. She knows I've been fighting cancer for several years. She's known that, but she hasn't been talking to me for 2.5 years now. Even when I went in the hospital, she never called to check on me. And just to give you an idea of what my family is like, I didn't want to even contact them when I was in the hospital. But the doctor and the head nurse and a couple of other staff members, they pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. "Call your family, call your family, call your family." And I said, "Fine, I'll call my family." But I had no expectation of what they would do. When I talked to my dad, I won't say that he wasn't mean. I won't say that he was mean, but this is basically what he did. He was basically thumping the Bible at me because he is one of those kind of deeply Southern religious types that believe that America's the best. You know, it's God's country, and to leave America makes no sense to him. But to go to China and then go to Japan, to him this is crazy because in his opinion, China's communist. Obviously, they're the enemy. Japan and America fought, and to him, Japan is just a bunch of demons because he watches all these old war movies and he has all these old ideas that Japan was just attacking everybody because they're so horrible, and he thinks that they're the devil basically. So for me to go live in these countries, I'm just an ungodly, godless person who hates Jesus. That's his opinion. So when I call him and I tell him I'm in the hospital right now, the doctors push me to call you, so I'm just calling you to let you know my situation because the doctor says it's really serious and any moment now I could die because there's a clot in my leg. If it comes out, it could go into my lungs. And his response was to basically tell me um, that I really need Jesus and I really need to turn to Jesus. And I was like, Dad, I was just hoping that you would, you know, give me a little bit of support here and just ask me how I'm doing, tell me you love me, things like that, But all he could do was focus on, and he didn't come out and say it directly, but he kept insinuating, you're in this pickle because you left America and you're in bad places you shouldn't be, godless places. And I finally couldn't take talking to him anymore. I said, I'm sorry, I got to go. And I hung up. Now, later on, my sister did contact me or I contacted her and we talked for just a few minutes and it seemed okay at first. But then later on, she said, I'll have to, contact you again later to check on you. I've got some things to do. And I said, no problem. Well, what happened with my dad was really bothering me. And the second time I talked to him, it was just more the same. So I decided I'm going to ask my sister to tell my dad to back off with the religious stuff. Stop trying to preach to me and just show me some compassion, show me some love, show me some care because that's why the doctors wanted me to contact you. They didn't want me to contact you for you to stress me out. So I contacted my sister and she said, let me call you on the way home because I'm busy right now, but I'll be free in a few minutes. And I said, no problem. Well, when she calls me, before I can even say anything, before I can even tell her why I needed to talk to her, and she didn't ask me. She just said, "Guess who I just had dinner with?" And I said, "I have no idea. How am I supposed to know that?" She goes, "Your daughter." Okay. And that's literally what I said to her. I said, "Okay." And she said, "She and I had a really long talk about you and what's gone on between you and her." And I thought, here we go. Here we go. And she proceeded to tell me how all of my decisions related to my daughter were so bad. I'd just done her wrong, and started telling me what I needed to do. It was like a different version of what my dad was doing, except more direct, harsher, and louder, and more judgmental, actually. And that's hard to do because my dad's very judgmental, or he's treated me that way anyway. But she started to get so loud, and I said, "Listen, I'm gonna have to ask you to stop doing that. The relationship between me and her is our business, has nothing to do with you. She's a young adult. She's not a little girl. She's a young adult, and that's between me and her only. And I need you to stop that right now." And she raised her voice and started yelling, so I just hung up on her. I haven't talked to my sister since then. So that was a little over 2 years ago. So I haven't spoken with my sister since then. I haven't even spoken with my brother in longer than that. I don't know. It's been 5 years. So the reason I'm telling you this is because if you are in a situation where you come to Japan and you're alone and you get a serious health issue, then I think that's something that you should think about before it happens. It might not ever happen, and I really hope that it never happens to you. Perhaps it won't happen to most people, but it's something that you should think about because if if you get blindsided by it and you have no support in your home country, then that's a big question. What do you do? Where do you go? Where do you turn? And there have been some people and some systems in place in Japan to help, and I can mention some of those to you, which I'll do in just a moment. But I think that's the first thing you need to consider. If you have some friends and family, especially family back home, who are You have a pretty good relationship with them, a loving relationship, a supportive relationship. If somebody in your family gets sick with cancer or some other illness and they need to be taken care of, and you know that they will be there for you, or that you'll be there for them, that's great. You know, you're blessed to have such a situation. But like I said, I said what I did about my situation so that you would see that there are people who, and it doesn't necessarily have to be abroad, but moving abroad makes it even more challenging. But if you move abroad, you move away, and then you have nobody else to support you, and then you get sick, and then you're completely reliant on yourself and whatever systems are in place, it becomes a really hard situation, a really big challenge. So you really have to ask yourself, what do I do? And I would say that there have been times in the past where I reconsidered my choices, either at the time or after I made the choices. Did I make the right choice? Did I would I change anything if I were to go back? Obviously, I would try to make some tweaks and optimal adjustments and changes to some of the decisions I made, things that would have made things easier, choices that would have made things easier. But the as they say, hindsight is always 2020. You can see clearly when you're already far out of it and you're looking back at it and you're like, I could have done this a little differently. I could have done this or that, or I could have gone here or there. I could have talked to this person. But you don't know those things, or you don't know all of those things, or you don't know that those things are the right thing at the time. And so that's why I'm telling you now that, if you're in a situation where you're in Japan and you're sick and you're dependent upon your income, and your visa is dependent upon your working, and you can't work, then you won't get a visa. Now you might ask, how did I get a visa if I wasn't working? Well, my visa ended, but before that, I was able to actually apply for a student visa and enroll in a school, a Japanese language school. And a friend of mine donated money to me so that I could pay for tuition and go to Japanese language school. But as fate would have it, about a month or so before I was to start school, that's when I had the blood clot in my leg and I had to go into the hospital. So when my class was beginning, I was in the hospital, just on the doorstep of death, and I was there for almost 2 months in the hospital. And when I came out, I had a huge debt. Even though I had insurance, I had a huge debt with the hospital. And it wasn't until I was supposed to start in, let's see, October, and I wasn't able to start until the middle of January. I was in the hospital from September until close to the end of November. Maybe, no, maybe no, it was a little earlier than that. It was maybe around November 10th to 15th or something like that. Uh, I think that's right. So, but here's the thing. You might ask, well, why didn't I go to school immediately? Well, because I could barely walk. I could literally barely walk. When I went into the hospital, I could barely walk. And by the time I got to see the doctor, I was in so much pain. I couldn't walk at all. I had to be put in a wheelchair. I was in such bad shape that I couldn't even bathe myself. Several people, several nurses had to help me from the bed into the wheelchair, which was very painful. And then they wheeled me down to the big bathroom. Then they would move me into kind of a bath wheelchair. It looks like kind of a wheelchair, but it's meant to be used as a bath. You sit in it, and they push you into the bathroom, and then they bathe you while you're sitting in the chair. And I was in such terrible condition that I couldn't even bathe myself. Now think about how crazy that is. I felt like I was 150 years old and I couldn't take care of myself. That's a lousy feeling when you're not even 50 years old. I mean, at the time I was 48, 48 years old, and I couldn't even bathe myself. So, slowly over time, it took me a few weeks. I was able to start walking again, but I was in the wheelchair for a while in the hospital. And then after I did start walking a little bit, I had to use a cane. Even after I got out of the hospital, I was using a cane for a while. And the doctor was really scared of letting me out of the hospital because of the blood clot. And like I said, he highly recommended I leave Japan. I go back to America. I get support from my family. But after, here's the funny thing, after they saw how my dad and my sister and my daughter were treating me over the phone, they finally believed me that I can't go back to America. There's no one there to support me. There's no one to move in with. Even if I'm literally dying, if the doctor had told me you have 1 week to live, go back to America, be with your family, and let them be with you when you die. Even if he had said that, I would have said, I have nowhere to go. I literally have nowhere to go. If my daughter, if I call my daughter and I say, listen, the doctor said I'm going to die in a week, and he said I should come back. I think my daughter would probably be upset about that and say, okay, come back. But it wouldn't be because she was really upset about me or my situation or anything like that. It would be guilt, and I wouldn't be interested in that. So you should consider your situation. If you have some family, then good for you. If you have some support system back in your hometown, this is what I'd recommend. Okay. Japan might be your dream, and it was my dream. It took a long time for me to get here. And I kid you not, as soon as I arrived, the pandemic started and I lost my job. The first year in Japan, I made no income. My savings was burned up paying for my bills. I was also sending my daughter money at the time. When I finally did start working, it was a very low paying, terrible job teaching at an English language school. It was Nova, if you want to know. It was just a little bitty place in East Hiroshima. I didn't even work there for a year. I couldn't take it. I had bad colleagues, or I'm sorry, I don't mean to say they were bad. They were behaving in ways that were very stressful for me. And I just got tired of it. And that's why I became an ALT. I started working for Interac, but that didn't last very long, even though everything was going really well at the school. The kids were great. My colleagues were awesome. Everybody loved me. I loved them. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid a little better than the Eikaiwa. And being there was so much better than being at the Eikaiwa language school. But I wasn't even there for a year when I got diagnosed with cancer and I got really sick. And I muscled my way to the end of the year just to get through Christmas. I really wanted to be at the school during Christmas. I wanted to be around the kids and my colleagues during Christmas. I wanted to give them some gifts. Um, I really wanted to have some good memories. It really is a special thing, even if you can only do it once, to teach at a school, an actual Japanese school, and just soak it in. The experience is so amazing. I taught at a school in China, a primary school in China. I taught at language schools in China. I was a tutor, a private tutor in China. I had a lot of experiences there. And the kids were mostly great, but mostly the girls. Many of the boys are very spoiled. I would say the majority of the boys, maybe 85 to 95% of the Chinese boys are very spoiled. They're treated like little emperors. This is an expression in China to refer to the little boys. They're called little emperors. So as they grow up, they're very, very spoiled. and they're very loud. They have no respect for a lot of things, other people. Other people don't really exist. The girls are much quieter. They don't like to bring a lot of attention to themselves. They don't want to stand out or get in trouble. So I loved teaching the girls, and they were fun, but the boys were always terrors. But when you come to Japan, what you see is, for better or for worse, okay, for better or for worse, you see much more discipline in the schools. Now, I have been told that at the parenting and the strictness of the parenting and things like that in Japan has gone down a lot. But still, compared to what I experienced in China, is night and day. And that the kids were so um, well behaved, but also fun at the same time. And being able to play sports with them, and I even did some activities with them that were really my creation. If you know the Ichiban Kuji, you can go to like a kombini or a convenience store and you can buy a little, like it's like a lottery ticket, but they have different prizes. For every ticket you buy, you win something. You always get something. But if you get really lucky, you can get one of the big prizes. I made something like that for the kids to where they could actually get a sticker, and there were different levels of stickers. There were only a few really nice big stickers, and then there were some middle stickers that were medium size that were okay, and then there were some tiny little stickers, just kind of the generic little good job and thumbs up stickers and smiley faces and stuff like that. But doing those special things at the school, I really wanted to be there during Christmas, and that's why I didn't take off for my medical condition. I did my best to get to the end of the year, but the question is, if I could go back, would I still have stayed in Japan, or would I have gone back to America at that time? And I have to say that unfortunately, I would not have changed. I would have liked to have been able to change my choice. But unfortunately, my family is just never there for me. I'm not saying that to judge them. It's just, I guess you could just say it's just a neutral, flat truth. So if you're in a situation like mine, you're in Japan, you're teaching English or you're working in IT or something, it doesn't matter, and you're alone, and then you get a serious illness, and the doctor says, "Hey, listen, um, I recommend that you go back to America and be with your family or get treatment in America. It'll be better for you." And you have some family that loves you and supports you, and you know that if you go back, they'll take care of you. Okay. If you're in that situation, I highly recommend that you do that. Japan will always be here. Okay. So even if you started to build a life here, but if you don't, unless you have like if you've gotten married, that's different. If you come to Japan, you meet somebody, you get married, and then suddenly they say you've got a serious illness, that's a little different. I'm talking about somebody who comes here and you're working and you want to stay in Japan. You really have the desire to stay in Japan. Maybe this was your goal, like me. My goal for many, many years was to get my degree. This was after a divorce. Okay. So after a divorce, my daughter was taken away, et cetera, et cetera. I went back to school, got my degree. I went to China to teach for a while, and then I finally got over to Japan. It took me many years. It took 11 years of my life to get here. That's not insignificant. I finally got here, and then in just a couple of years, I'm diagnosed with cancer. And then my doctor tells me, you'll be lucky to live more than 2 years. And he says, with treatment, you'll be lucky to get to 6 years. But if you get to 10 years, it's like a miracle. That's what he told me. That was kind of his time frame. And he said, this is only if you have treatment. But the treatment that he wanted to give me was a bunch of chemotherapy and stuff. And I refused that. So it's been a struggle for me to be here. But if I just had one family member, just one, who was close to me, back in America, then I would have gone back. Not to go back and die with my family around me. That's not why. Because in my mind, even if the doctor says you're gonna die in 3 months, I still feel like, like Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance. I feel like there's always the chance. It's too negative for me to believe that a doctor is gonna proclaim that you're gonna die in a certain amount of time and it must come true. And there are a couple of reasons for that. When I was a kid, I was already sick. I was really sick when I was about maybe 5 years old. I got some kind of illness. They took me to the doctor. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse. I wouldn't eat. If they tried to make me eat, I would throw up. Everywhere on my body that you would touch would hurt really badly, really badly. And they didn't know what was wrong with me. They had to take me to Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. The specialists there, they did a spinal tap, they did all these scans, they did all of these things to just a 5-year-old me, and they didn't know what was wrong with me. They couldn't figure it out. So I stayed in the bed in the hospital with an IV in my arm to give me fluids, and I was just losing weight like crazy. And my mom was there almost every day just crying and crying and crying. She wasn't really helping the situation. It's really kind of funny because I didn't think about it at the time because I was just a kid, but years later, I look back on that and I thought, man, my mom was really not helpful in that situation because I remember I was just a kid and I was the one telling my mom, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Jesus is going to take care of me. That's what I was saying. I was saying that to my mom as a 5-year-old. I'm like, of course, Jesus is going to take care of me. I mean, I believe in Jesus. Jesus loves me. That's what I'm taught in church, right? So everything's going to be okay. And my mom's just like, oh, oh, it's like the more I would assure her that I was going to be okay, the harder she would cry. And I found out later on that the specialist had told my parents, it's better for you to just go ahead and prepare for his funeral because they really thought that I was going to die. Well, guess what? I didn't die. Obviously, I'm still here. And just, I remember bits and pieces of that time, but I do remember just one day, suddenly I was laying there in the bed and I was like, man, I am so freaking hungry. And I called the nurse and I said, I'm really, really hungry. Can you please bring me some food? And she just looked at me and she said, are you sure? Because for the longest time, I hadn't been eating anything. And if they did try to make me eat something, I would just throw it up. And I said, I'm absolutely sure I'm famished. I need some food. And she said, what do you want? And I said, I want some breakfast food. That's always been my favorite ever since I've been old enough to have solid foods. Bacon, eggs, and toast, and jelly, and waffles. Oh my God, I love waffles and pancakes. Bring it all to me. Sausage, the little link sausage. Uh, Bring me all of it. Orange juice. My God, I love orange juice. Everything about the traditional Western breakfast, I love it. I don't like muffins, but that's more of an English thing. I love muffins. I mean, not muffins. I love biscuits. Um, I just chocolate milk. Oh, I wanted all of it. I said, please just bring me all of that. Can you do that? And she said, oh, definitely. She was so excited. And they started bringing all of this. And several of them hung around. A couple of doctors came in, a couple of nurses. They were watching me to see what was going to happen. And I was just like, la, 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 la. Those comics of Garfield where Garfield is just eating the lasagna and his mouth is huge and he's throwing the lasagna in his mouth. That's how I was, like, ravenous, and I was eating it, and I didn't get sick. I didn't throw up. I was better. Now, the effects of my illness for such a long time didn't mean that I was immediately better, but my illness was past. Okay. And from that point, I had to regain my strength and my muscle and things like that. So I still had to stay in the hospital for a little while longer and regain my strength before I could go home. And even when I did go home, I was still very weak, very tired. It took me months to kind of recover myself. So the doctors were wrong. They said that I was going to die, and they were wrong. This was in Houston. Whenever I left the hospital, the doctors told my mom and dad something else. They said, because Brandon was so very ill, this is going to stunt his growth. So he won't grow to be very tall. He'll be short or shorter, probably shorter than average. So you should be prepared for that. Well, guess what? I grew up to be the tallest in all of my family. My dad is 5'10". My mom is actually very short. Well, she was. She's not with us anymore, but she was very short, barely 5 feet tall. She's like 5'1". My dad was 5'10". My older brother, 6 foot even. Me, 6'2". So the doctors were wrong again. They were wrong about me dying. They were wrong about me being short. I became a really good basketball player, baseball player. I was good at many sports. I was offered a scholarship to play basketball. Why did I tell you all this? Because the doctors have already told me once before that I was going to die, and I didn't die. They told me that I was not going to be tall, and I was tall. They told me I would not be able to physically do all the things that everyone else was going to be able to do. They were wrong. I was above average at everything that I put my hand to or set my mind to. And now here I am in Japan with advanced kidney cancer. And now I have metastasis on my right lung in 2 spots. Before it was 1 spot, and now that spot has grown a little bit, and there's a new spot. And they can't do surgery on my kidney because the vena cava, I believe it's called, the artery, you have basically blood being pumped down, and you have blood coming back up, right? Well, the blood coming back up, it's a main tube, I guess you could call it, and that tumor is basically right on it. That tumor is quite large on my kidney, and it's right on that. It's applying so much pressure, and it's kind of gotten into that artery, so they can't do surgery to take it out. They told me this years ago. So basically 3.5 years ago is when I was diagnosed. So I'm still here after 3.5 years, but 2 years ago, basically exactly 2 years ago, the doctor told me that more than likely I'd be gone within 1 to 2 years. So according to him, I have less than half a year left. And like I said before, he told me if I did all of the treatments, then that was my prognosis. I haven't been doing. I did some of the treatments. I took some of the medicine. There was like an inhibitor, a cellular inhibitor medication that I took for a while, but because I lost my insurance in Japan, I was not able to continue that medicine. If I pay for it, it's really expensive, but that's something to talk about later on. But essentially, I stopped taking that medicine. I don't take the blood clot, the anticoagulant, the blood thinner medication anymore. Now it's just me and my prayers and whatever my diet can do for me. So is the doctor's word the final word? No. But when you get into a situation like this, if there's one thing that I could have other than millions of dollars, okay? Because I think if I had millions of dollars, I could put myself into a kind of a health resort and just stay there. And every single day, all day long, just be taken care of by some really great people. I would love to do that. But other than that, I would really like to have close, loving family around me to be with me, not necessarily to take care of me, but to just be there for me, to have the hugs and the kind words, the encouragement, the support. I don't have that. And I do have some close friends, but they're not around here. I'm in Hiroshima City. My close friends are far away. Even my friends in Japan are not nearby. But my closest friends are not even in the same country. And I don't have a huge amount of friends. But the point is, when you are in Japan and you don't have the option of going back to your home country to get that support from your family, and you're diagnosed with serious illness, what are your options? I'm encouraging you to think about this beforehand. Think about it before it happens so that you can have kind of a plan in place. And if something does happen, you can say, I've already thought about this. I was prepared just in case, because you never know. We all die. It's something that we can't escape. I know there was a figure in the Bible that was taken up to heaven without dying. Was it Elijah or Elisha? One of those, I think. He never actually died. He was just taken up to heaven. I don't think I'm going to be that lucky. And probably most of us will not be that lucky, if not all of us. So, in since that's the situation, what I would say is it's kind of like assume the worst case scenario before it happens, not because you expect it, but just to ask yourself the question, if that were to happen, what would I do? What would I do? And if you make a decision right now, this is what I would do. Make that decision. Okay, that decision is done, no problem. If for some reason that situation comes up in the future, it's no sweat. You already know what to do. You can just turn the switch on. I already have everything in place. It's already prepared. So make sure your system is ready and in place just in case. But like I said, if you have loving family, even if you have just one person in your family that can help you and support you if you're really sick, I highly recommend that you don't stay in Japan or whatever country you're in. I recommend you don't stay there and deal with it alone, because if you're on a work visa, you got to work. If you don't work, you can't keep your visa. And here's another problem. You still have to pay for your health insurance. So if let's say that you have 6 or 7 months left on your contract, well, between now and then, if you're going to stay in Japan, you still have to keep paying your health insurance premiums every month. Plus, if you go to the hospital, you have to pay your copay. And if you have medicines that are prescribed to you, you have to pay your copay on that. You have to continue paying your bills. You have to continue doing all of that. And if you're alone, how are you going to do that? I I managed to do that, but it was a combination of things that were scratching and clawing, asking many friends for help. My family never gave me anything, not even one penny. They literally sent me nothing, just zero. My aunt in America has sent me a little bit of money before to help me. But my friends, by and large, have sent thousands of dollars to me in the past several years since I've been sick. It's my friends that have been there for me, but my friends also can only do so much. Friends can't do everything for you. It's not like your friends, well, let me change this. This is the type of friend I am. If I have a friend who's alone and they get seriously diagnosed and they're having a hard time and they can't support themselves, my hope in that situation, okay, this is what I would like. I would like to be able to provide them a place to stay, to take away their financial burden. Because if they're struggling to pay their finance or struggling to pay their bills and their finances are basically shot because they can't work, I want to do what I can to help them lower their stress level and give them the best chance to recover. If they don't have family and they need that help, I would really want to be able to help them. That's what I would like to do as a friend. If they're really a friend, okay, this is what I'd want to do. But I don't, and most people don't. I mean, be honest. Think about your friends that you have. How many of them would be able to do that? It really is life intruding, right? For your friends, for one of your friends, take you in because you're alone, you're ill, and you're not able to work and take care of yourself, and your life has become so difficult because of this illness, and you have no family to support you. If you don't have that, then who are you going to go to? You'd have to have a very, very special relationship with a friend for them to be able to take you in that situation. And so I've been fighting over the past 3.5 years, basically, with a combination of my own efforts, a little bit of support from the Japanese government. They've offered some support here and there, um, and with some friends donating some money to me. Um, that, but I got to a point where I stopped asking my friends for money and asking them for help. I mean, how long can you keep doing that? How many years can you keep doing that? That's how long I've been fighting this situation. I've had this cancer situation for 3.5 years, and for 3 of those years, I haven't been able to work. So that's why I'm telling you that I decided to make this video because, I mean, there's some other practical things that I'd like to share, and I'll do that in the future. I'll do some videos about that in the future because I can tell you all sorts of things about what I've done to try to get help and assistance. Some things that have worked out and some things that haven't worked out. My visa status has changed, and when your visa status changes from one to another, you don't necessarily get the same benefits. Some of your benefits are stripped away. And for example, I mentioned before that after my job, I went to a Japanese language school for a year. And as a student, I still had access to healthcare, insurance, and things like that. I was able to get a pension payment exemption. So I didn't have to pay into the pension because of my income going down to almost nothing and because of my health situation. But I still had to pay health insurance every month. But after I finished school, it was either leave Japan or get another visa. I wasn't in good enough condition to work, so I got a special activities visa with medical reasons. It's for medical, um, um, what's it called? It's not just medical support, medical care, basically. So it's a special visa that Japan offers for people who want to get medical care in Japan. It offers residency, but it's a special type of residency that's more like a tourist. It's like a long-time tourist. So I'm not allowed to work. That includes working on the internet. And I'm not allowed to have insurance. So even if I'm paying full price for health insurance, I'm not allowed to have the national health insurance in Japan. So my medication that I was paying basically $300 a month for, this is the the cancer medication that I took before. It's anti it's a I'm sorry, it's a cellular medication. It's a inhibitor, that's what it is. Cellular inhibitor. It inhibits the cancer cells. It's not really meant to cure necessarily, but it's supposed to keep them at bay. So it's not supposed to grow and spread. I was taking this for quite a while, and it seemed at first it was really difficult, but it started to seem like it was helping. But then I lost my insurance when I changed my visa, and guess what? The cost for that medicine alone went from $300 a month up to almost $3,000 a month. Can you imagine? Can you imagine paying $3,000 a month? And guess how many pills that is? 2 pills a day. That's how expensive it was. 2 pills per day cost $3,000 a month. Isn't that crazy? So, of course, I couldn't afford that. I couldn't even afford 1 month, much less every month, $3,000. That was crazy. So I literally had to stop taking the medicine that I was using to help me with my health, and I had to stop going to the hospital. So it was kind of crazy because my visa allowed me to stay here for medical treatment, but I couldn't afford the medical treatment anymore. And I made a special request to the Japanese government to allow me to at least do online work because I had a really good paying online English teaching job, and it's not stressful, and the classes are only 25 minutes long. And in 1 hour, if I teach 2 classes, I would make 4,000, no, I'm sorry, 2,000 yen. 2,000 yen, it's not a lot in US dollars, but 2,000 yen is actually more than English teachers in Japan get paid in the schools per hour. But you only teach for 50 minutes and you can make your own schedule online. But they told me, no, you can't work. And I said, but I'm making a special petition to ask you to give me a special permission to work. And they said, no, you can't. They didn't even consider it. They immediately blocked that when I went to immigration to give my application. And they even went one step further. They made me sign an agreement saying, I understand that I cannot work with this visa and I will not work. They made really, really sure to hammer it into my head. You're not working, and you tell us you know that you're not working and you're not going to work. I mean, they were very harsh. And I explained to them, listen, I know that I'm here for medical reasons, but I have cancer and the prognosis is not good. If I'm not doing even online work, how can I pay for my medicines and my trip to the hospital? And they were like, too bad, so sad. That's literally basically what they said. They said, I'm sorry about your situation. I understand, but no, you can't work. Why not? You can't. But why not? Because you can't. That's not an answer. So immigration typically is not helpful at all. They are not meant for advising, and they're not helpful at all in answering questions. They are very straightforward and direct, and they will tell you, this is the law, this is the policy, this is the law, this is the policy. But I know for a fact that there are some situations, especially with the Tokote Katsudo. The Tokote Katsudo, it just means special activities. And there are many different Tokote Katsudo visas for different reasons. Some of them allow work and some of them don't. There's even a Tokote Katsudo visa just for taxi drivers. So if you wanted to be a taxi driver in Japan and you have at least N2 level Japanese, and you have your driver's license and you have driving experience, you can apply for a driving job in Japan. You seriously can. Or a delivery driver. They have driving jobs in Japan that foreigners can take, and the pay is much better, much, much better than being an English teacher. And this actually falls under the Tokote Katsudo Special Activities Visa. So you would get insurance, you would get work, and all of those things. But that's a little different. When you're here for medical reasons, the Tokote Katsudo visa is more akin to, and this is what the immigration lawyer told me, okay? So this is directly from the Japanese immigration lawyer. He said the tourist visa that you get when you come to Japan is very, very similar to the special activities visa for medical treatment. If you come to Japan and you get the special activities for medical treatment, you're allowed to stay here for medical treatment for a year because that's the term of the visa. But during that year, you absolutely cannot work. And that means for a Japanese company here in Japan, online work here in Japan, and guess what? Even work for a company outside of Japan. So if I were to get an online job for an American company, online, okay, just online, and I'm working online and making money, that is against the law. They don't even allow that. They allow none of that. So your only source of support, essentially, you'll have two. One is your savings, and the other is donations from friends and family. That's it. Any working activities against the law. The second thing that surprised me was after I got my visa, I went to the municipal government office one day just to check on something. And then they said, you need to turn in your insurance card. And I said, what? Why? I need my insurance card. And they said, well, you can't have it. Why not? Well, because your visa is the Tokate Katsuro special activities visa for medical treatment. And with that visa, that doesn't allow for health insurance. You're not allowed to be under the national health insurance with that visa. So we have to take it. Now, this was very important to me for a couple of reasons. Number one was obviously it made my trips to the hospital and my medicine unaffordable. That's the first thing. But the second thing was I didn't just have my insurance card. Okay. I had another document that went along with my insurance card. And this is not a document that everybody gets. You only get this if your income has gone down substantially. Then you're able to get this other document. And this document is very important because it limits how much you can be charged for medical treatment within a 30-day period. So if I were to be hospitalized again, for example, and I've already been hospitalized twice, once for almost 2 months and the second time for a week. But if I'm hospitalized for anything, then there's a cap. Once the price or the cost gets up to a certain amount, it's capped, it's stopped within a 30-day period. That second piece of paper was very valuable and not easy to get. But I went through a lot of trials and tribulations with my finances, my health before I got that document. And then they took it away. They took that away and my health insurance away. So that meant that not only were they taking away my ability to work, but they were also taking away my ability to get any kind of discount when I go to the hospital. That meant that I had to pay 100% for everything, and there was no cap, there was no limit. So if I get put in the hospital, if I were to have another blood clot, or if I were to have an emergency and I got put in the hospital and I were to stay in the hospital for another month or two, that bill would be outrageous. And unless things turned around in my life and in my body, I would never be able to pay that off. So that's why it's very important for you to think about these things, because if you're unable to work and take care of yourself, then things become very difficult. So where am I at now? How am I able to get by right now? Well, I'm just barely getting by. I did qualify for partial disability. Now, for those of you who are familiar with disability, I'm sure you know what it is. Basically, if you have a physical impairment, if you're injured, if you're really, really sick, if you're incapacitated, your ability to take care of yourself is hindered, and there are different levels you can apply for. And it's the same in the US. I'm sure that many countries have this also. If you're disabled in whatever way, you can get some financial assistance from the government. It's typically monthly, but in Japan, it's every other month. And when I applied for this, it took like 7 months for them to process it. And they finally approved it. But when they finally approved it, they started to pay me, it was helpful. But as you can see, I'm still somewhat autonomous. I can kind of get around and do things. I'm able to get up and go outside. I'm able to prepare my meals. I'm able to live alone. I don't have to have somebody here right now to take care of me. So I'm not at the maximum level of disability. I'm at the partial disability level. And that means that I don't get the full amount of support. So how much are they paying me? Every 2 months, I get 100,000 yen. That's 50,000 yen a month, but I only get paid, of course, every 2 months, and it automatically goes into my bank account. Now, 100,000 might sound like a lot of money, but when you really need closer to 300,000 a month to have a decent, livable salary, and I'm only getting 50,000. So I'm getting basically 1/6 of a good base salary. So 100,000 is like $650, maybe something like that. Um, maybe $600. So you could say I'm getting $300 a month. That's what I get from the Japanese government partial disability pension that I'm receiving. So that leaves a huge deficit because I still owe the hospital. I've got 2 credit cards maxed out from hospital bills and medicines. Plus I still owe the hospital for my hospital stay, about 80,000 yen, and that's 10,000 yen a month. Plus all of my other expenses, you know. And this apartment here is not mine, so the price is very low. It's just 28,000 a month plus electricity, gas, and water. Uh, all of that together comes out to over 30,000. So just my apartment, I guess you could say my apartment alone takes almost all of that pension money. Where does the extra money come from? Well, I have another YouTube channel that's a sports channel, and the donations through that channel basically um, give some extra. But right now, it's it's basically less than my pension money. So the amount of money that I need to get by each month is actually higher than what I get each month. So every month I'm just digging a hole, digging a hole, digging a hole. And you know, it's sad because my mind keeps thinking, who can I go to? What family member or friend could I go to? And there's none. I want there to be, you know, I want there to be a. I wish I could call my daughter and say, hey, listen, I don't know where you're at or what you're doing, but you know, I really could use some support right now. You don't have to send me money, but you know, can I come stay with you for a little while and get checked out and see what the doctor says? That's not possible. I've tried to reach out to my family again this year, but they don't respond. None of them have responded. I've tried calling them on different phone numbers. Um, no responses. So I'm not sure exactly where all of this is leading. I know that there's a purpose in all of it. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to share this with you today. I don't know who all's going to watch this video in the future. Maybe just a few, maybe many. I don't know. But I felt like there's so many people making YouTube videos in Japan, and they are just talking about, you know, like abroad in Japan. Most people know his channel. Today we're going to go to the smallest, tiniest apartment in all of Japan. You know, and who cares? Who cares about that? That's meaningless. It's just total drivel. No, that's not going to help anybody. There are several channels that have millions of subscribers that are making these videos about Japan, and they're fine for entertainment, but they're completely useless otherwise. They're not going to help anybody. And I haven't been making a lot of videos because I feel like there are also people making a video basically every single day. I'm not going to say who it is, but there's one guy, bless his soul, but I don't care for him. And the reason I don't care for him is because he does videos every single day where he live streams behind the camera. So you never see him. and an Australian guy who basically just runs his mouth about what he thinks the situation is, what he thinks the situation is in Japan. And he always says, I'm the only one saying this. Nobody else says this. And he's always hating on foreigners. And it's kind of funny because he came to Japan. He's a foreigner. He came to Japan. He bought an old house here. He set it up. He set a cafe up, and he thinks he knows everything about Japan. But other foreigners who have a dream of coming to Japan and living here and buying their own house and renovating it and doing their own thing or having a life in Japan, he talks really badly about those types of people. And he's always saying bad things about other foreigners in Japan. I don't do that. Of course, there are some bad foreigners in Japan, but those are not the bad foreigners. The bad foreigners in Japan are the ones that are coming here as if they are refugees, but they're not really refugees. They're just being shipped here under some type of agenda, and they're making the crime rate go up, and they're making certain areas in Japan quite dangerous. And these are the people that are causing problems in Japan, not people like me who come to Japan with a dream of buying an old house and renovating it and having a life in Japan. People like me are not ruining Japan. It's literally these people are coming here under the guise of, oh, an immigrant who's having trouble in their home country because of oppression and whatever, and I want to come here and seek a better life and assimilate in Japan. They don't want to have anything to do. They just want to come here and just kind of do whatever they want and tear Japan down. But he never talks about those people. He always talks about people like me, and he's insulted me and said some bad things about one of my channels before. And I don't want people to feel the way he makes me feel when I see his videos. Whenever people watch my videos, I want there to be something helpful in it, which is why I made this video, because I don't want people, if at all possible, I want people to be in a situation where they're prepared before they come to Japan. Or if they're already in Japan, they can become prepared just in case. And they get some kind of useful information, something useful from my videos, so that they increase their knowledge. And the sheer amount of things that this other guy talks about, you think he basically knows everything there is to know about Japan, but no one can know everything about Japan. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't been making a lot of videos, is because what am I supposed to say every single day? And now that so much has happened to me with my health and work and schooling and going in and out of the hospital and dealing with the government system and immigration, and now there are lots of visa laws and things like that, all of these changes that are going on and all of these things that have happened to me over the past several years. I mean, it's been a roller coaster all the way through the pandemic, and my family, my daughter especially, turning their backs on me, getting cancer, having to take off work, struggling to keep my visa, losing my insurance, going into the hospital, going out, going back into the hospital, constantly having to go back to the doctor, not having enough money to pay for even a basic doctor visit, stuff like that. I mean, and these are just a few of the things. If you go back and you look at the whole story that I've experienced since, since I've been a kid, my life has been, you can't say that it hasn't been interesting, because it's been very, very interesting. But if I could go back and change just one thing about my life, just one thing, it would be to remove fear from myself. I was happy. I was very happy, even when I was in the hospital at 5 years old, and the doctors said that I was going to die. And my mom was crying, and my family was basically preparing for my funeral. I wasn't sad. I wasn't scared. I didn't have any fear. I wasn't old enough to really have any fear at that time. And I knew that I would be better. I just knew it. I don't know how to explain it. I just knew it. I just knew it. And I told my mom that. I'm gonna be okay. I'm okay. It's okay. And my mom would just cry harder because she didn't believe that. She thought for sure I was gonna die. And I don't want to say this in a judgmental way, but I think there was a part of my mom that felt she would benefit from that. And you might say, "Oh man, come on, your mom loves you. Your mom loved you." My mom had many emotional issues, okay? Many emotional issues. God rest her soul. I loved her and I do miss her. But like I said before, she was a big storm. She was always a big storm. So many emotional issues. And she was the center of attention. When somebody else was sick, when somebody else was in a bad situation, when there was a disaster in the family, everyone was focused on my mom because she sucked in all of the attention on her. She made every situation about her. So even when I was 5 years old and apparently dying or seemingly dying, and the doctors assured them that I was dying because they couldn't help me, they didn't know what was wrong. My mom made it about her. And then later on, after my wife left, I have no shame in saying that I injured myself because I was so depressed. My daughter was taken away from me. My daughter was about 7 years old at the time. It was right before Christmas. My heart was broken. I was very, very depressed, very depressed. And I thought maybe the world is better off without me. So I injured myself in a very, very severe way. And I was taken to the hospital. I had to have emergency surgery, and I stayed in the hospital for several months. It took a couple of months to just be able to start to begin to physically move around. But then after that, they kept me in the hospital for at least another month for psychiatric evaluation and stuff like that. They did an IQ test on me. I thought that was the funniest thing. They did an IQ test, and the psychiatrist said, "You have a very high IQ." And I said, "Okay." And and she said, "Why would you hurt yourself? If you're so intelligent, why would you hurt yourself?" And I asked her, "Do people with high intelligences not have emotions? Is that what you're trying to tell me?" She actually got annoyed with me for asking that question, but it's an honest question. Since when do smart people not have hearts? And I'm a very sensitive guy. I'm not going to lie. It's hard for me to talk about stuff like this. Much easier now than it used to be because I've been through so much. But if you ask me to talk about even thinking about talking about my daughter when she was little and the relationship that we had and how close we were, it's difficult to talk about that without crying because that's all I have to hold on to. That's the most loving relationship I've ever had in my life. And she was taken away from me by her mom. And so you can understand why I was so depressed right before Christmas when I couldn't even see my daughter because that's the American way. That's what I came to believe. And that's why I wanted to leave and come to Japan. But if you're going to come to Japan and you don't have any of that support back home, you need to find a way to take care of yourself. You need to find some type of, you need to develop a strategy. You need to sit down and imagine the worst case scenario. What would I do if I'm working in Japan, I'm living in Japan? And this could apply to any other country or even if you're living in another city, okay? I don't know what country you're from, but maybe you move far away from your hometown, another city, another country, doesn't matter. Write down this question. What would I do if I were working and I'm the only one taking care of me? I have no one else. And suddenly the doctor says, you have advanced cancer. It's very serious. You should go back to be with your family, let them take care of you. but you have nobody, what would you do? I just happened to be in Japan. I was in China before for almost 7 years, like I mentioned earlier. That would have been, I was about to say that would have been worse for medical treatment because I wouldn't have had any insurance at all. And you might think, oh my God, the hospitals in China are very bad. That's not true. It depends on which one you go to. But the problem is for a foreigner like me, yes, I can go to a hospital where there are good doctors, great staff, good treatment, but it's going to cost a ton of money. And without insurance, that wouldn't have been possible because once again, you're in a situation where you have to work to pay for it. The only difference would have been I could have had amazing support from my friends because I had a really strong, close friendship network in China. You have no idea. Once you develop a friendship network in China and you have friends that are close, it's like nothing that you've ever experienced. I've never been in another country where I've had such close friends just right there around me, just immediately there for me all the time. And that's what it was like making friends in China. But if you're whatever country you find yourself in, you should write the strategy down. What would I do? If I can't go back, then what would I do? But my recommendation to you, now, by the way, I can't tell you what to do in that situation. That's individual. That's up to you. But I will say this: if you have some family and they care for you, and you find yourself in Japan or another country or another place, and the doctor says you should get your family support, then I recommend you take that advice. It's invaluable. I wish I had that. I always wanted that. But everything happens for a reason. I won't say that life dealt me a raw deal. I'll just say that it has contributed to who I am and the way I think. And it's helped to that's what it means when people say it made me who I am. It's because you had experiences and however you perceive it, you choose to perceive it a certain way and you can learn from it. You take it in, but I don't think that you should absorb it. You should take it in, feel it, experience it, be grateful for it, and then let it go. And this is actually why I believe I've gotten this tumor is because I've been hanging on to everything. I've been keeping everything inside. From a very young age, I started to be shamed. Um, I was ashamed of my body, my appearance, and my family just, they piled onto that. I don't blame them for that. We kind of teach people how to treat us. So if you're ashamed of yourself, if you don't love yourself, then what do you think other people are going to do to you? They're going to shame you. They're not going to love you. It's just the truth. You educate people by the way you treat yourself. You educate them on how to treat you. So if you're blessed enough to have somebody to go back to, if you're sick in Japan or anywhere else, that's my recommendation. Go back to your family. Japan will always be here. You can come back later. But if you're alone and by yourself, difficult to tell you what to do. But I would say this: seek out any help that you can get immediately from the government office in the country that you're in and in your home country. If there's anything they can do, trust me, you're going to need it as soon as possible. Don't wait, because some things you just don't think about right away. But, like, for example, just a few days ago, I found out about maybe I can get some kind of support from the US government, some kind of disability related support, because they make special exceptions for people who have a a grim prognosis, and my prognosis doesn't get much more grim. The doctor told me, like I said, 2 years ago, essentially, you're going to die most likely in the next couple of years, 1 to 2 years. Well, it's been a year and a half. And he told me, if you're taking the treatments, well, I stopped my treatments in April of this year. So May, June, July, August, September, October, November, that's 7 months. I haven't been taking any of the medication for this cancer tumor. So, according to the doctor, I should definitely be gone already. And it is true that my body has tried to adapt, but it is also true that I've gotten worse, and who knows what's going to happen. But I guess that's kind of all I wanted to say today. Whoever joined today, I saw that I had a few people pop in and out here and there. It looks like I've had one person here for a while, quietly listening. Whoever you are, I want you to know that I love you. I consider everyone, regardless of whether I like them or not, regardless of whether I want to be around them or not, regardless of what they've done to me or done for me, doesn't matter. I really do love all people in my heart. I really do. And I think that's important for all of us. We have to look around, and even these people that seem to be doing horrible things, absolutely horrible things in the world, I think we have to ask ourselves, what's the reason for these things? Because I really do believe that there's a reason for all these things. And that we're all connected. We're all a part of God. And if we're all part of God, and some of us appear to be doing these horrible things while others are doing seemingly wonderful, amazing, loving things, how can we say that one thing is bad while the other is good? We can say that one thing is very beneficial and preferable, while the other is, definitely not preferable and not beneficial. But regardless of whether we choose to be A, B, C, or Z, or whatever, it's just a choice. It's a choice to have an experience. To choose to be a certain way is a choice. And if I were to say, hey, listen, your choice is bad, I think that's judgmental. I will say that my family, the things that they chose to do and the way that they've chosen to treat me, it's been very, very challenging for me to be able to separate my emotions from that and begin to see that there's reason for it. And while they may be choosing to do things that are not beneficial for them or me, there's no point in me saying, hey, they're doing bad things. That's a subjective thing, bad and good. But what is objective? Objective is that we choose to walk the path that we're on. And if I'm ill with cancer, there's a good reason for it. I think the reasons for everything is good. Seeing what that reason is, that can be tricky. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say, I suppose. Maybe in the future, I will come back and talk more practically about some of the things that I've applied for that might help you if you were to get into a situation where you need some help while you're in Japan, such as applying for things at the government office, getting help through the hospital, who to talk to, and ways you can get help for free. These things are all possible, and I wouldn't have learned these without my illness. So maybe it can help you out and make your life much easier. So I went through the fire already. There's no reason for you to go through more fire if you can learn from my journey. So that's it for now. Once again, love you all. Thanks for being here. Thank you for listening in. And I hope to see you again soon. I guess for now, that will be it. Have a really great day, morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. It's about 11:09 a.m. I think I'm going to make myself some nice miso soup and watch the rest of an LSU football game, which I think started about 30 or 40 minutes ago. But that's it for now. Once again, arigato gozaimasu, and I will see you again hopefully soon. But that's it. Now, if I can figure out where the... Okay, there it is. I was wondering where the end stream button is. I think I just found the camera. Oh, okay. I didn't know. I didn't. That's okay. That's it. Bye-bye. See you next time. Thank you.